If you ever have a dream where a man is standing in the rain, just watching you, and somehow you know he has already killed 10 women, what would you do? Would you run? Would you call the police? Or would you do what I did and tell yourself it was only a dream? Because that's how it starts. Not with a scream, not with a body, not even with blood. It starts with rain. And a man you've never seen before, standing far away in the dark, like he's been waiting for you. My name is Alex Rivera. I'm a true crime podcaster from New York. In 2018, I flew to South Korea to research a documentary series about old unsolved murders. That's when I ended up in Hwaseong. If you know anything about true crime, then you've probably heard the name before. Back in the late 1980s, Hwaseong was a quiet rural area in Gyeonggi Province. Rice fields, dirt roads, drainage ditches, small villages where everybody knew everybody. And between 1986 and 1991, 10 women were murdered. Most of them were found on rainy nights, or right after rain. They were discovered in fields, embankments, roadside ditches, bound, strangled, gagged with their own clothing. The victims ranged from young girls to elderly women. The killer moved like smoke. Always there, never seen clearly, never caught. Police poured everything into the case. Thousands of officers, thousands of interviews, an entire region living in fear, and still nothing. Officially, it became one of South Korea's most infamous unsolved cases. But that isn't the part that got under my skin. What got to me was what the locals whispered when the cameras were off. They said some people saw him before the murders. Not in person. In dreams. I heard that rumor on my second day there. I was in a tiny restaurant outside Suwon, going over old newspaper clippings, when a fixer I'd hired introduced me to a retired officer named James Harlan. He was Korean-American, former Liaiso, an officer, tall, gray at the temples, the kind of man who didn't waste words. He sat across from me, looked at my notes, and said, "You're digging into the wrong case." I laughed. That's usually the right case for me. He didn't smile. "Don't go too deep into this one." I asked him why. He stirred his coffee for a long time before answering. "Because the people who spent too much time thinking about that killer," he said, "started seeing him." I thought he meant trauma, obsession, suggestion. People fill in blanks when fear gets big enough. So I asked, "You mean witnesses?" He nodded slowly. Witnesses, family members, even officers. Some of them said they dreamed about a man standing in the rain, medium height, dark clothes, wet hair, no expression, just watching. I leaned forward. And then? Harlan looked at me like he regretted saying any of it. Then some of those people came back and said the man spoke to them. I waited. Harlan's voice dropped. He told them they were next. That should have been the moment I backed off. It wasn't. Because when you work in true crime long enough, you develop a bad habit. You start believing every mystery has a shape. Every ghost story has a human source. Every legend has a reason. I thought this one would too. That night, I stayed in a business hotel in Seoul and started reviewing archived case materials. Weather reports, crime scene summaries, victim timelines, newspaper scans. And there it was again. Rain, rain, rain. Almost every major attack was connected to wet weather, storm systems, drizzle, night humidity, muddy roads, waterlogged fields. There was something ritualistic about it. By 2 a.m, I had headphones on and old police interview transcripts open on my laptop. That's when I fell asleep. And that's when I saw him. I was standing in a field. It was dark, but not fully dark. The sky had that heavy gray-blue color just before a storm breaks. The soil under my shoes was soft and wet. Then the rain started. At first it was light. A few drops. Then more. And across the field, maybe 50 yards away, there was someone standing there. A man. He wasn't moving. He just stood there with his shoulders slightly forward, like he had been waiting for me to notice him. He wore dark clothes. Nothing remarkable, no mask, no hat, no weapon. That was the worst part. He looked normal. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew instantly that it was him, the killer. I don't know how I knew. I just did. Then he took one slow step toward me, and another. And then, in a calm voice I somehow heard over the rain, he said, "So, you can see me too." I woke up so hard I almost fell off the bed. My heart was racing. My shirt was damp with sweat. But that's not what bothered me. What bothered me was the pillow. It was wet. Not sweaty. Wet. Like it had been left out in the rain. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Condensation. A leaking vent. Anything. The next morning I met James Harlan again, and almost didn't mention the dream. Almost. But when I did, his whole face changed. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "Describe him," he said. I did. Dark clothes, wet hair, medium build, no expression. Harlan just stared at the table. Then he said, "You need to leave Hwaseong alone." I asked him how many people had reported the same thing. He said, "More than you'd think, fewer than you'd believe." That answer stuck with me. So instead of leaving, I drove out to one of the old crime scenes. It was near a drainage ditch beyond a stretch of farmland. Quiet, open, windy. The kind of place where your voice disappears. Nothing about it should have felt threatening in daylight. But it did. I stood there with my recorder, describing the terrain, the route from the road, the visibility from nearby houses. And then, halfway through a sentence, I stopped, because I heard something behind me. Fabric. A soft, dragging sound, like wet cloth moving against grass. I turned around. No one, just wind. Tall weeds, gray sky. But down near the ditch, caught on a broken branch, was a strip of red fabric. A scarf. Old, faded, mud-stained. I didn't touch it. I took a picture instead and walked back to the car faster than I wanted to admit. That night I dreamed of him again. This time he was closer. Close enough for me to see his face. And I wish I couldn't, because there was nothing monstrous about it. He looked like an ordinary man in his 20s. Plain face, plain mouth, tired eyes. But his expression was wrong. Too still. Too empty. Like a person wearing the idea of a human face. He held the red scarf in both hands and looked at me almost curiously. Then he smiled. Not wide, just enough. And he said, "They always think I'm gone." I woke up gasping. On my laptop screen, my audio software was open. I hadn't opened it before sleeping, and there was a waveform on the timeline. I hit play. For a few seconds, all I heard was static. Then rain. Soft at first, then heavier. And under it, a voice. Male, low, calm, speaking Korean. I didn't understand the words, but I knew they were directed at me. I sent the clip to my fixer for translation. He called me back 10 minutes later and asked where I got it. I said, "Why?" He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "It says, I'm still in Hwaseong. Now you are too." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, Harlan finally agreed to take me to meet an old investigator, Detective Park Min-ho. Park had worked the original case. He was retired by then, thin, sharp-featured, the kind of man who carried silence like a wound. We met him in a small house outside the city. I expected reluctance. Instead, he seemed strangely prepared for me, like he had known someone would come asking sooner or later. When I brought up the dreams, he didn't laugh. He went to a back room and returned with a folder. Inside were sketches. Not official suspect sketches, not exactly. These had been drawn from interviews with people who claimed they had seen a man in their sleep before or after one of the murders. Witnesses, a family member, maybe more. I looked at the first sketch, then the second, then the third, all slightly different, but the same face, plain, young, empty eyes, and every version looked like the man from my dream. I asked Park how many people had seen him. Park answered without hesitation. Enough for us to stop writing it down. Something cold moved through me. I asked what he meant. He said, "At first we thought it was fear, then coincidence, then contamination from the media. People hear stories. They repeat faces. It happens." He looked at the sketches again. But some of those people described details that were never released. I said nothing. Neither did he. Then Park leaned back and told me something I still think about when it rains. He said one witness, a woman related to one of the victims, had come in days before the murder and begged police to keep her sister home. When they asked why, she said her sister had been dreaming about a man in the rain for a week. A man who kept saying the same sentence. "Because you can see me." Park said they ignored it. 3 days later, her sister was dead. After that, he stopped sleeping well. After that, some officers started dreaming too. I asked if he ever saw the man himself. Park looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Only once." I asked what happened. He answered in a flat voice. He stood beside my bed and asked if I was still looking for him. By then I should have walked away. Instead, I asked for copies of the files. Park refused. Harlan drove me back in silence. Before I got out of the car, he grabbed my wrist and said, "Listen to me carefully. There was another researcher before you. Foreigner, early 2000s. He got obsessed. Said he was hearing rain inside his apartment even when the weather was dry." I asked what happened to him. Harlan let go of my wrist. "They found him hanging in a storage shed near one of the old fields." I waited for more. He shook his head. There was a note, only one line. "He keeps coming closer." That evening, I booked the earliest flight back to New York. I told myself I was done. No final walkthrough, no more interviews, no last look at the case files. Just leave. Simple. But that night, before my flight, it started raining. Hard. The kind of rain that swallows the city. I stood by the hotel window watching water streak down the glass. And for 1 second, I saw him reflected behind me. Not outside. Inside the room. Standing near the bed. I spun around. No one there. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A message in Korean. My fixer translated it in seconds. Rain is falling in Hwaseong tonight. I didn't sleep. Maybe I passed out. Maybe I blacked out. I don't know. All I know is that at some point I was dreaming again. Only this time, I wasn't in a field. I was in my hotel room. Everything looked exactly the same. The curtains, the chair, my suitcase by the door, and he was standing beside my bed, close enough for me to smell damp earth and wet fabric. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was the strange one. Then he spoke in perfect English. "Tell them about me." I couldn't move. My whole body felt pinned down. He leaned in a little closer. His voice was almost gentle. "You're going home now, that's fine, and go too." I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Then he said the last thing I ever wanted to hear. Anyone who listens long enough starts to dream. I woke up on the floor. My suitcase was open, my clothes were scattered everywhere, and across the hotel carpet, leading from the bed to the window, were wet footprints. Bare, human, muddy. I left for the airport before sunrise. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't stop for coffee. Didn't check my messages. Didn't look out the car window when we passed the edge of the city. I just wanted to get on the plane. I was already seated when my phone vibrated again. No number. No text. Just a photo. It showed a field in Hwaseong under heavy rain. And in the background, almost hidden by the weather, was a man standing still and facing the camera. I deleted it. Then it reappeared in my gallery 10 seconds later. I deleted it again. Same thing. By the time the plane took off, I had stopped trying. I'm back in New York now. I'm recording this because I haven't slept through the night in weeks. Every time it rains, I wake up before dawn with the feeling that someone is standing in the corner of my room, not moving, just watching. Sometimes I hear fabric dragging across the floor. Sometimes I hear breathing. And once, I woke up to find the edge of my pillow damp again. So yeah, maybe this is just trauma. Maybe it's obsession. Maybe I buried myself too deep in a case that already had enough ghosts. Or maybe Detective Harlan was right. Maybe some killers don't stay in evidence files. Maybe some of them survive in memory, in fear, in story. And maybe that's all a haunting really is. Something terrible that learns how to travel. If you've listened this far, I need you to do me a favor. Tonight, if it rains where you are, don't look out the window for too long. And if you dream about a man standing in a field, holding a piece of wet cloth, do not speak to him. Do not follow him. And whatever you do, don't tell him you can see him.